Here is part 2 of my theory on what if Brett Farve stayed with the Falcons. In the last episode, part 1, I talked about his tenure from 1992 to 1996. This part, I'm going to talk about the years of 1997 to 2001. So, tune in for this one as we get ready. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if? An NFL theory. So when we last left off, it's 1996, and the Packers, even without Favre, they still won their Super Bowl against the Patriots. But of course, for Favre, he has not gotten a Super Bowl win yet. He hasn't even made the Super Bowl yet, as the Falcons struggled to an 8-8 record. And of course, the Rams were with Jeff George, but things are now about to change as we go into 1997. And the first change that would happen is Chris Chandler. Chris Chandler, of course, was on the Houston Oilers at the time, and he would eventually be traded to the Falcons. But of course, since Favre is on the Falcons, they're not going to trade for Chandler. So then, where's he going to go? Well, I thought of a perfect place for him. The Packers. Which would be a perfect time too, because Bobby Herbert retired after 1996. So they won the Super Bowl with a not good quarterback. Now they have a chance, who is about to have an awesome season in 1997. So how would it pan out? So in 1997, the Falcons with Favre would play much better after going so terrible last year, and they would improve to 9-7. Meanwhile, for the Packers, the defending champs, with a much better quarterback in Chris Chandler, who would put up 29 touchdowns, they would improve to 12-4 and look like an actual scary threat to repeat. And the updated 1997 playoff standings, the Vikings move up to the 5th seed as the Falcons make the playoffs as the 6th seed. So in the wildcard round, the Falcons visit the Giants, and the Falcons were just as good as the Vikings, if I remember correctly off the top of my head looking at the stats. And with a much better quarterback, the Falcons still get the win like the Vikings did, which sets them up in the divisional round at the 49ers. Now, of course, like I said in the previous video, Favre was unstoppable against the 49ers from 1995 to 1997. But there's one big problem right here. The 49ers played pretty good in the divisional round 1997, and the Falcons are just not as good of a team as the Packers. So despite Favre playing good, the 49ers will do enough to stop the Falcons and win it. So the conference championship is still the Packers at the 49ers. And of course, the 49ers played terrible against the Packers, and Chris Chandler being just good enough to replicate Favre will get the win. So the Packers go back to the Super Bowl, where they once again play the Broncos. So with Chris Chandler, could it be that the Packers could maybe beat the Broncos this time around? Unfortunately, no, as the Broncos would do enough still to get the win regardless. Going into 1998, the Falcons hoped to finally make the Super Bowl, and they would really show up with one of the league's strong defenses, and Favre still playing good, although not as good as he did the previous years. It would be enough for the Falcons to stun everyone by going 15-1, the first team to go 15-1 since the 1985 Bears, as they clinched home field advantage in the playoffs. Meanwhile, for the Packers, with Chris Chandler, statistically he was better than Favre in 1998. So because of that, the Packers do better in 1998 as they go 12-4, looking like they're going to try and make a three-peat in the Super Bowl appearances. And the updated 1998 playoff stands, the only thing that changes is the Falcons and Vikings swap places, and the Packers and 49ers swap places. So in the wild card, the Packers now host the 49ers. And of course, this was the game that the Packers finally lost to the 49ers in the playoffs after several years, as the catch number 2 happened. But Favre played not that good in that game. Now, of course, Chandler didn't play in this game. So I would have had to do random chants based upon his stats. Now, the main deciding thing was Favre threw 2 interceptions in this game, with one of them being returned back for a touchdown. Unfortunately, since Chance did not play in this game, I have no way to calculate that he would throw that interception, and more importantly, would it count to any points. So I would have to take that interception off of it, but he would make the touchdowns needed in this game based upon the random draw. So the Packers instead beat the 49ers in this scenario, as they now visit the Vikings, where they would be crushed by the Vikings. Meanwhile, the Falcons would now host the Cardinals instead, as they would crush them as well. So now the conference championship is the Vikings at the Falcons, as this would be insane. But there is one little change, and that is the quarterback for the Falcons, Favre. The problem with Favre is, statistically, he wasn't as good as Chris Chandler was in 1998. He threw more touchdowns, but he threw a lot more interceptions. Combined with the fact that Favre did not play good at all against the Vikings. They crushed him pretty much in 1998. So, despite being at home in this timeline, the Vikings would actually beat the Falcons, as Favre would not make the touchdown needed to get the win. So the Super Bowl is the matchup everyone wanted instead, the Broncos and the Vikings. Now, of course, I've covered this game so many times before, and it kind of is like 50-50 on who I think would win based upon the stats. So I looked at it again, compared the teams, and did some random number generator to calculate chances of how the Vikings would play, since after all, they didn't play in this game compared to how the Falcons did. This time around, I think before I've had the Broncos beat the Vikings, this time my calculations would have the Vikings get the win in their first title in 29 years. So in 1999, Favre and the Falcons, hoping to go back to the Super Bowl, especially since it's at home, hope to do well, but of course the Falcons struggled in 1999. Favre did not play good either, but he was so better than the quarterback play that they had in 1999, so in reality, they would only regress to 7-9, which is their first losing season since 1993. Meanwhile, for the Packers, they would struggle all year, as Chandler struggled plus got injured, and without Favre, the team completely bombed out as they finished 4-12, their worst record in years, and they would release Chandler at the end of the year. And in an updated 1999 playoff standings, the Lions move up to the 5th seed, as the Panthers make the playoffs as the 6th seed, but in the end, I don't think anything would change. So going into 2000, there's going to be one change, and that is Chad Pennington, the only quarterback taken in the first round of the 2000 draft. Now, in real life, he was taken by the Jets very late, but there's one team that needs a quarterback very badly, and they're desperate enough to take him, and that's the Packers, as they now draft Chad Pennington. Now, Pennington, of course, would not play until 2002, so I don't know much how he would affect the Packers for the next 2 years. So in 2000, the Falcons hope to try and recover and get back to their form in 1998, but they actually play worse in 2000 as they regress to 4-12, even though Favre didn't play as bad compared to the other quarterbacks they had at that time. But for the Packers, Chad Pennington's first year, he played okay, as the Packers slightly improved to 6-10, but not much improvement. And the updated 2000 playoff stands, in the AFC, the Colts move up to the 3rd seed, as the Dolphins fall down to the 5th seed, and the Broncos fall to the 6th seed. Meanwhile, in the NFC, the Vikings move up to get home field advantage, as the Giants fall to the 2nd seed, the Rams move up to the 3rd seed, and the Lions make the playoffs as the 6th seed. But in the end, I don't think anything would change the outcome of the playoffs. So now we're into the 2001 draft. And of course, the big thing that happens now, Michael Vick. Now, of course, the real life, the Falcons traded up to the #1 spot to take Michael Vick. But of course, the Falcons have Favre. And he's only age 32, so they're still sticking with him, and he's not ready to get a replacement yet. So the Falcons are not going to do a big trade up to get him. So now where will he go? Well, I decided the Chargers still need a team to trade up to get him, and there is a new quarterback need team to replace their aging quarterback, and that is the Jets. Since they couldn't get Chad Pennington last year, they'll get Vic this time around. So in 2001, with Favre playing better and the Falcons playing better, they actually improved for once to go to 10-6 and get their first win season since 1998. Meanwhile, the Packers with Pennington play solid still, but it is enough for the Packers to go 10-6 and get their first win season since 1998. And the updated 2001 regular season stands, all the changes are in the NFC as the Bears move up to the #1 seed over tiebreakers, as the Rams fall to the 2nd seed, and the Falcons make the playoffs at the 4th seed as the Packers fall to the 5th seed, and the 49ers fall to the 6th seed. So the wild card in the NFC side would begin with the 49ers at the Eagles, as the Eagles dominated in real life wild card round against the Buccaneers. The 49ers did not really play as good in the wild card round against the Packers, so the Eagles would still get the win. But then the next day, the Packers were at the Falcons. The very first time Favre would go up against what could have been his team in the playoffs. And the Packers played good, but Chad Pennington was not as good as Favre, so you have to put Favre in the Falcons position. And the Packers were just not that good in the playoffs without Favre, so the Falcons beat the Packers, which then sets them up at the Bears, where unfortunately for the Falcons, Favre played horrible in the 2001 divisional round. Remember when they played the Rams, he threw 6 interceptions with multiple of them being pick sixes, combined with the fact that the Falcons defense is nowhere near as good as the Eagles' elite defense was. So the Bears this time beat the Falcons, which sets up the conference championship where the Bears now host the Rams. And I think the Rams would get this one. They went up against honestly a more rounded, better team than the Eagles, and they got the win. I think they could do it against the Bears, and with that, the outcome of the Super Bowl does not change. And with that, part 2 is now over, as we're going to look now forward to part 3 as we look at 2002 to 2006, as Favre is still trying to get his first Super Bowl. Will he do it as the Falcons look ready in 2002? You'll have to find out then. So tune in next time for part 3.